Welcome to Daily Brief this week. 5 days of remodeling industry intelligence distilled into what actually matters for your production schedule, your design conversations, and your margins. Here's what you need to know heading into next week.
Here's the tension running through this week's news. Demand for remodeling is still real, but the runway underneath it just got shorter, and the cost of doing the work just got more expensive. If you're building your 2027 plan off how 2026 has felt, this week's data says slow down and recheck your assumptions. Welcome to the weekly review of residential remodeling news for the United States and Canada. Each week we pull together what happened, what it means, and what to do about it for production leaders, design leaders, and of course, business owners. This week's episode is a good one to share with your team because almost everything in it points to the same place: your numbers, not just your backlog. If I had to sum up the week in one sentence, it would be this: confidence is holding, but the cushion under that confidence is thinning. Remodeler sentiment is still positive. Remodeling is still the best performing corner of residential construction, but three things happen this week that all pull in the same direction. Slower growth ahead, higher costs right now, and longer timelines to deliver the work you've already sold. None of these is a 5-alarm fire on its own. Together, they're worth a real conversation at your next leadership meeting. Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies updated its leading indicator of remodeling activity, the LIRA, this week, and for the first time, it's projecting all the way into early 2027. Growth is running around 2.1% right now, easing to 1.6% by year end, then dropping to just 0.5% by the first quarter of 2027. That is a steeper, longer runway of deceleration that earlier updates has showed. Why it matters: growth does not disappear, it just gets a lot thinner. Full year spending should still hit roughly $518 billion in 2026, but if you build next year's plan by copying this year's pace, you're building it on the wrong number. Watch backlog and lead flow in the fourth quarter. Watch early stage decision inquiries, since both tend to soften before revenue does. And anchor your 2027 budget to the conservative case, not the current one. Leadership response. When you build your 2027 budget this fall, are you using this year's growth rate or Harvard's more conservative 0.5% case, according to the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies? Story number 2, NAHB's Remodeling Market Index for the second quarter came in at 61, just 1 point below the first quarter. Still the strongest sentiment reading anywhere in residential construction. On Tuesday, the NAHB economists and Harvard researchers held a mid-year forecast webinar, and the number underneath the headline was this: 74% of remodelers said suppliers have raised material prices since March by an average of 6.7%. Now, why does this matter? Your phone is still ringing and your backlog looks fine, but the cost side of every job you are pricing has moved since the spring, and that gap is where margin quietly disappears. Now, reconfirm pricing on anything not yet ordered, especially quotes older than 60 days. Have substitution options ready for clients, and check whether your contract actually have ESCA language in them. The leadership response here is pull your 5 oldest open estimates right now. Are they still accurate according to the NAHB? Number 3, tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper remain locked in at up to 50% on primary metal products, and Canadian softwood lumber is scheduled to climb to nearly 36% in August, with a federal review that could push final numbers further into the fall. Now, what's changed this week is that it stopped being a one material story. The Romac Whole House Commodity Index rose again in July to its highest point of the year, with lumber, engineered wood, roofing, and steel all climbing together, driven by trade policy and mill closures, not demand. This matters because it makes cost harder to predict and easier to underestimate. Lock in lumber and heavy metal orders ahead of the August change where you can. Keep a plan B ready on metal fixtures and appliance packages, and shorten your price hold windows on new proposals to 30 or 45 days. Does your proposal template protect you if material costs move again before the client signs? According to Romac Building Supply and the U.S. Department of Commerce. Story number 4, industry estimates put the construction workforce shortfall at roughly 349,000 workers needed this year alone, with nearly 40% of the existing skilled trade workforce over the age of 45. New analysis this week connected that shortage directly to project length. Timelines that used to run 6 to 8 months are now stretching 9 to 12. This matters because this is not background noise anymore. It is a real number on your production schedule and in the conversation you're having with clients about when their project finishes. Build more conservative time buffers into schedules now. Move up specification and selection deadlines so design is not the bottleneck. And look at locking capacity with your busiest trade partners. The leadership response here is this: if your average project takes 3 or 4 months longer than it did 2 years ago, does your client communication say that out loud? Number 5, existing home sales fell 2.5% in June, even as the median price hit an all-time high, $440,600, and single family housing starts and permits both slipped this month. Meanwhile, remodeling posted its 3rd straight monthly spending gain, the only part of residential construction to do that. The mortgage rate lock-in effect keeps pushing homeowners to improve their home they have instead of buying or building anew. And it held again this month on both sides of the border. Canada is telling a related but different story. CHBA's Spring Renovation Market Index came in at a neutral 50.3, but real renovation spending fell 1.6% in the first quarter, and the regional split is wide. Atlantic Canada mildly optimistic, Ontario and British Columbia notably softer. In the US, this remains the structural tailwind behind the industry, though a meaningful drop in mortgage rates could shift the calculation. In Canada, there's no single national market right now. Performance depends heavily on province. Keep investing in lead generation while this advantage holds. And if you operate in Canada, benchmark your local read against your provincial numbers rather than the national one. Here is the leadership response. Is your marketing built to reach people who have decided to stay and reinvest, not just people thinking about moving? And for our Canadian firms, does your plan account for your province moving differently than the national average, according to the National Association of Realtors, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the Canadian Home Builders Association? Now, we put all these stories together and the pattern is pretty clear. Demand is still leaning your way. People are staying in their homes and improving them instead of moving. But two forces are working against that tailwind at the same time. Costs are climbing faster than most estimates account for, and timelines that are stretching faster than most contracts account for. Margin risk is not showing up at the end of a project anymore. It is showing up at the estimating desk before you have even signed the client. That is the real story of the week. It's not that business is bad. It's that the space between a good quote and a profitable job just got narrower. For production teams, the most important question this week is whether your schedules reflect how long jobs are actually taking right now, not how long they took 2 years ago. Now, for design teams, watch your early stage lead and selection activity closely over the next quarter. It tends to move before the headline numbers do, and it's your best early signal for 2027. Now, for business owners, go back to your estimates and your proposal templates this week. If they do not have real cost escalation in a shorter price hold window, you are carrying tariff and material risks that belongs on the supplier, not on you. A few things worth keeping on your radar. Now, the Commerce Department review of Canadian softwood lumber duties could land as early as August, and it will directly affect framing costs. Watch for the August tariff step up on Canadian lumber to actually take effect and to show up in your supplier quotes. Keep an eye on mortgage rate movement, since even a modest drop could shift the buy versus remodel calculation that has been working in your favor. And watch for third quarter housing starts and existing home sales data, which will tell us whether June's softening was a blip or the start of a trend. Here is the question I would leave your team with this week. If costs keep climbing and timelines keep stretching, but demand stays strong, is your business actually more profitable right now or just busier? Those are not the same thing, and this is a good week to find out which one you are running.
That's Daily Brief this week. Catch the daily updates all week long on Substack, and we'll see you back here next Friday.